was something that got me going.
I'm talking about, there's only so many amounts of, there's only so many different ideology. There's no set number of different ideologies that humans can come up with. You know, you have the bad
ideology or evil
ideologies.
Because there's two different. They're different things.
They're different things, but or in this specific instance.
Did you say Pacific?
Specific.
Okay. All right. So we were talking about the capacity of evil, right?
Yeah.
And how ideologies can keep going. And the analogy was that because we were going through Chattanooga and I saw the beautiful mountains, and I said, you know, I was talking about history and things not being clear. Like, people that study history can see the shapes a lot easier than other people before the ridge line starts to become more.
Let's start this again.
Now that we know. No, okay, this is good. This is good because this is the first video, maybe of a lot many. And he's gonna. Oh, and you gotta tell where are we coming back from?
Oh yeah, Athens, Tennessee.
Why?
Battle of Athens.
When?
46.
Okay, so we're talking about ideology and politics and why
there's no set number of ideologies that can come up. People can come up with. You know, you have the bad. You always have. You have the ones in history. You know, fascism, communism, democracy. But they all came from somewhere, and that somewhere is usually humans. And, you know, humans have proven that no matter what, there's always room for creativity, and whether or not that creativity is necessarily a good thing, not exactly always is.
Meanwhile, she's playing with her socks in the background, so you just see hands come up with socks. So anyway, so the analogy that I came up with was that you've got all these, you can see them in the background through the window, right? No, because the camera's pointing back.
Yeah, that's pretty cool.
So you can see like all these beautiful, crossing the Tennessee River on 24, and you can see these ridge lines. And basically the analogy was that we're hauling ass towards these ridge lines, and that window of correcting or reacting to it before we hit it, it's rapidly shrinking because we're accelerating towards these ridge lines. And as we get closer, it goes from a vague shape, you know, purple mountain majesty, to, okay, now you're starting to see a little bit more relief. You're starting to see that, yes, it's trees and not just a big purple blob. And then as you get closer, you can see the branches and everything like that. But by the time you actually see the reality of what you're headed towards, it's usually way too late. That was the analogy that I was that he got out of me. You see him? You see the ridge line back there? The camera can see it. I can see the road. So, yeah, that was good.
Guess so.
It can't be like, okay, talk about gun control, because you got to think about, okay, what's the context of what are we talking about? Are we talking about why it's bad? Are we talking about why it would be a good thing? Like what our beliefs are, or what my beliefs are, or what an ideal world would be? It's just too broad of a topic. Or it could be why gun control is so difficult to talk about with people who don't understand firearms. Right? Because that would be more. Everybody else has talked about gun control and why gun control is important and why it's not important and all this other stuff. But instead, it could be more of a question of why it's so difficult to talk about that topic, regardless of what side you're on.
Well, if we're going to talk about that, we have to have somebody that's, you know, not necessarily a pro.
What happened to you being the devil's advocate?
Well, there's only so much I can do before it starts to become, what are they called? Straw man
fallacy?
Yeah.
Well,
and that's kind of something I see a lot is,
look at the bag. It's beautiful. See the migrants there.
there's, now you interrupt me, and a train of thought just went off like a bridge into the ocean.
Strawman fallacy.
Strawman fallacy, and something you see a lot when it comes to when you watch podcasts and things like that is they're making a point, but it's all just points that they take from the internet, and they don't necessarily look all the way into them. And it's kind of hard for me to play devil's advocate here, considering that that's not my mindset, and it's very hard to put myself inside those shoes, I guess.
So why is it so hard as somebody who is, well, you would have to define sort of what your stance is for the sake of the viewer.
For the sake of the viewer, my stance is that, with the exception of fully automatic weapons, which is not defined by the ATF, not defined by people that think you pull the trigger once and you pull the trigger again and you have 2 shots, and that's a fully automatic weapon. No, it's semi-auto.
You sound like Joe Biden.
Well, I don't exactly know where I'm going.
No. I mean, how would you define? Because the ATF does define what an automatic weapon is.
Well, semi-automatic is pull the trigger once, 1 round has left the chamber. Pull the trigger twice, 2 rounds have left the chamber.
Okay, so what's your stance again?
With the exception of fully automatic weapons, all gun laws are unconstitutional. Yeah, unconstitutional. There's not necessarily all of them, I guess, though, because you have.
What about felons?
Yeah. I mean, just relating to something that the law-abiding citizen, as people say.
What about domestic abusers?
Well, they're not exactly law-abiding citizens.
But they're prohibited from owning firearms, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
So why is it so hard to have a discussion with somebody who feels opposite of how you view firearms?
Well, you think about a lot of these arguments that people come up with, and I mean, just listening to Coley on Noir last night, talking with some guy who's saying that the 223 round is leaving bodies unidentifiable. I've never seen a body hit with 223 round, thankfully, I guess, but from all types of ammunition are designed to kill. It's not like 223 is more designed to kill than 7.62 by 39 or 9mm. They're all designed to kill someone. It's just some are better at doing it and some aren't. 223 is a good round because it's good for users just learning how to use a firearm. It's
Why?
very light recoil, very flat trajectory. It's generally just a very reliable round. It's a good round. A lot of people talk about banning assault weapons, as they say, because they can put a big hole in someone when they don't realize that these are the type of people that say they're pro 2A for hunting, and you can have a hunting rifle but not necessarily an assault weapon. And
What is an assault weapon?
assault weapon. Now we're going off on tangents again, but that's not for me to define. I'm not the one who's trying to ban them.
Is there such thing as an assault weapon?
Yeah. M240 is an assault weapon. Well, at least full auto. Belt-fed weapons are
assault weapon something that's fully automatic, or is it something else?
It doesn't necessarily have to be fully automatic. I mean, well, I guess it does kind of, because one could say that all weapons are assault weapons, because you can take a .22 pistol with one round in it, beat the crap out of someone, and technically just committed assault with a weapon. So I guess you could call that an assault weapon. I don't know.
Look at that. There's a plane in nose first in the parking lot. Yeah, it was a plane, Rosemary. Okay, so why is it so hard for you to have discussions with friends and family who fall on the other end of the firearms favorability spectrum? FFS.
When they don't understand something, they often resort to other things that they do understand for reassurance, I guess you could say. You know, some people talk about weapons, and since they've never fired one, or they haven't had much experience with them, they go to what's familiar with what they're familiar with, such as movies, video games, especially video games, because, well, at least with the people that I have contact with, because, you know, it's familiar. See Rambo out there with the M60 just laying down hate. Well, that must be all weapons, because there can't really be that much difference with them. It's not like it's talking about different types of fish, right? I mean, they all swim in the water. They all have gills. Can't be that much difference between them. No, it's difficult.
My biggest problem with having any kind of discussion with people that don't necessarily view firearms the same way that I do is that it's not very much of a stretch to understand where they're getting their information from. All you have to do, if you've been around firearms, if you've been around rifles, pistols, whether it's military, whether it's hunting, whether it's anything, you kind of know where people are getting stuff, and it comes from both sides. It comes from the whole, stop it, must stop in power argument. We know where that comes from. That comes from 45 fans or 30-06 fans. But you also get to know where the major criticisms come from, and it becomes very tiring because you hear the same things over and over again. It happens even in the gun community where people are sitting there and they say the same things over and over again, and you're like, but no, enemy, I swear, just because you have a Mosin Nagant doesn't mean that you're a big fan of Enemy at the Gates, okay? But that's the same thing. So my issue is that you're going to hear stuff that I know is coming from places like CNN or The View. God, I love The View. The View, man. You've never watched The View?
Are you happy about that?
No, actually, yeah. I'm not happy about that, because that's one of the biggest sources of a lot of popular opinions. It's worthy of understanding criticisms of things that you hold dear. So listening to The View gives you all sorts of fodder for understanding where the other side's coming from. But anyway, for me, it's really hard to have any kind of genuine discussion, because a lot of times people are just going to revert back to what they've heard on CNN or what they've seen in movies or what they've seen in video games, and that's it. That's the only reality. And they usually don't want to explore any other version or any other consideration beyond what they already know, because just like you said, it's uncomfortable to have a perception of reality upset by something like reality.
that, and I think that's the rest of everyone. I think everybody just wants to do bad things to the government.
As we come from Athens. Not that neither of us condone any kind of force against the government, just so that's clear. But it's important in understanding certain aspects of our history and why that could also be very, very bad. And that's the other thing that a lot of people don't really understand as far as when it comes to firearms. It's so. Did you ever watch the YouTube video that I put up? Okay. So I had this video where I was on my way to pick up Rosemary, and it was kind of the thing that I was going to do. Yes, I know. Where I would just record. It was like a video blog, Inspiration on the Road, where I'm sitting there recording my thoughts while I'm on the way to pick up Rosemary. It was very short form, and it was just me in the car. And one of the things that I was talking about was that picture from Ukraine, the one that I told you was haunting, because it was the woman that was holding the baby with that guy, the guy that was getting ready to shoot her. What's very frustrating about having discussions with people that are staunchly for gun control is that they don't understand that they're kind of creating the conditions for the same atrocities in history that they want to so readily compare other events to, or other people to. So, for me, it's frustrating because I do realize that there's an idealistic reality that a lot of people do not live in. Or no, that a lot of people live in that I can't. I've been to Iraq, I've been to Afghanistan, I've lived in Detroit, I've lived in paradise, I've lived in great places, I've lived in horrible places. We drove by where the Scottsboro 5 were pulled off from the train on the way to Athens. We've gone through Pulaski, Tennessee after you came back from Detroit, right at the height of all the George Floyd protests. So there's always a one side and then the other. But what it comes down to is a lot of people that don't understand firearms, they don't understand the role that firearms usually plays in history indicates how bad things can be, or how bad things have gotten. And by getting rid of firearms, you're not really getting rid of the capacity of that evil coming back. You're just getting rid of the capacity for law-abiding people to defend themselves against that kind of evil. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Do I think that... Do you think that everybody who can own firearms should own firearms? With no training and no form of control?
Been flagged by way too many people for me to say that is a good idea.
I've seen people be flagged, and flagged is when you're unintentionally swept over by the barrel of a weapon, meaning they're not being careful about keeping the weapon pointed away from you. And this is typically at a range where it's even the most disconcerting. It's always disconcerting, but it's very unnerving at the range when somebody actually brings a weapon off the range and sweeps the whole firing line.
Especially when you see that weapon has a magazine and the bolt is forward.
Yeah. So, no. I've seen people that were dumber than AKs, and that's actually pretty dumb.
Dumber than AKs, but are they dumber than Moses?
I wouldn't let them touch a Mosin either. These guys guys came up to the office down in Columbus, and I got the call on the radio to keep an eye on these guys because they had set the rifle, one of the AKs, up against the wall with the magazine in and the bolt forward, and the rifle slid over and fell on the ground. Did not go off, but still, you have no idea. And the guy was like, "Oh, well, it's not loaded." Well, I don't know that. I don't know that. I don't know. I do not know if it's loaded or not because there's a magazine in and the chain bolt is forward. Do I think that there should be some level of training? Absolutely. Absolutely. Just like I think there should be mandated national driver training. If you have this, if you have it covered by state, then it doesn't make any sense because, drivers in Tennessee are much better than the drivers in Hawaii, which are much better than the drivers in DC. And if you know me, you know that they all suck. Because I hate drivers in Tennessee. Hate them with a passion. Hey, I didn't turn on the windshield wipers again. But, yes, I think that there should, here's the other question, do you think that there should be a requirement for insurance?
Insurance? Like life insurance in general?
No, to drive a car, you have to have car insurance. To own a firearm, you have to have liability insurance.
Wait, so we're talking about cars or firearms?
Firearms.
Okay. No. Because then you kind of run into one of the issues of one of the major reasons why firearms should be legal in the first place, so that people who normally can't access resources that would help them protect themselves and their families from people that want to do them harm, into forcing them into only relying on the government for that. Now they have a firearm, but if you put insurance on them, then they can't necessarily afford on top of the firearm and on top of the ammunition to sustain them. It kind of becomes a moot point, I guess.
So it would disenfranchise lower income firearm owners because they wouldn't be able to maintain that level of insurance? Is that what you're kind of getting at?
Yeah, I guess so.
I like how you're eyeing all the restaurants as we go by, going, I just want to eat. I just want to eat. But, yeah. I do not think that people should have anything really mandated. And I don't think that they should have, let me rephrase this. I think it should be up to the individual. She's parroting me. She's basically parroting everything that I say, but she just said individual. It's disconcerting. I can't concentrate. Because you're breaking my concentration. I don't think anything should be mandated. That was a shoe. With the exception of some basic level of training, but I think that training should also be something that covers CPR, right? Basic first aid. I think that there should be a national mandate for basic first aid, CPR. I think that there should be a national mandate for, I don't know, how to balance a checkbook, even though nobody writes checks, or have some sort of basic common sense, but you can't mandate common sense, and I'm going a little bit too far. But just like with cars, it should be something that's across the board, so there's not much difference between the states.
Even then, though, it's with such a large country as America, it's very difficult to do.
Why?
A lot of stuff. Well, you just have so many other factors that are going into it.
We have a national currency.
We have a national currency, but that national currency has different value throughout different states. I mean, you think about
Texas?
Yeah. Probably quite a bit. Take $100 to California or Hawaii, that's going to be a much... You're going to be getting a lot less gas because that same thing kind of applies throughout food, housing, electrical. The value of the dollar, although its official value stays the same throughout all states, it kind of... It changes slightly.
So what was your point?
I have no clue.
So this was your idea. Why was this your idea?
This was your idea originally.
But you said that we should have recorded the conversation earlier, right?
Yeah.
Why is this a good idea?
Seemed like a neat idea.
Are we putting this up on YouTube?
No.
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 Why?
No.
Why?
Not this one.
Why?
Because this is the first one. I'm still kind of like...
Oh no, you're never gonna get a perfect product from the very beginning.
Exactly, which is why I don't want to post this one on YouTube.
But this gives, I've got six subscribers. 6.
Yeah, but if something kind of takes off.
You think that this is gonna kick off?
I highly doubt this will ever kick off, but in the unlikely event that it does, kind of.
Well, we're at 28 minutes. If people are still watching by this point, I think if they make it this far, then there might be some interest on it. But it'll be interesting to actually see. You know, and the thing about it too is I thought about this because Dave does a lot of recording for his son, right? I write because it's mostly for you guys. But think about if you had conversations with Hank, or if I had conversations with Mom, where we were just discussing stuff. How invaluable is that later on in life?
Yeah.
So,
I don't know. I don't want to post this one.
I do, because one of the things that I really appreciate is the fact that the ideas that I might have about why I write or why I might do things might inspire somebody to do the same thing. Right? So if they get off their butt and actually go and record a conversation with their kid or a discussion with their kid or write something specifically for their kids or for their family. Because there's going to be stuff that we talk about that we go back later and we're going to go, I can't believe I said that. Well, guess what? We're human. We change. You know? And there's going to be people who are going to criticize, and guess what? People criticize because they have nothing else to do. Or they actually have something genuine that they sit there and go, oh, well, I think that they're wrong because of this. Bring it. Bring it. Criticize me. I'm not afraid of criticism. I'm not afraid of people sitting there going, blah, 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 blah. Because maybe, just maybe, they might have a valid point. And I'm not going to dismiss just people who criticize things just because they criticize. I'm actually going to listen. Maybe. Might not listen to everything. Might go, okay, yeah, got it. First 3 sentences told me everything I need to hear. That's usually disingenuous because we just talked about why it's so hard to talk about something like firearms with people who don't believe in firearms. So I make the effort to listen, but it goes back to I would much rather this get people off their butts and realize that they have the technology to record something that will be important in the future for their kids, for their family, for their political enemies. Because, if anything, I'm consistent.
The reason why I don't want to post this is because we don't exactly have it's very undefined right now. When we're kind of flowing throughout different topics, it's very difficult to find one audience. That's kind of something I notice is a lot of these people that post a lot of stuff.
It's very focused. It's very specific. But you know what? We'll figure that out. You know, we'll come up with a format. We'll come up with something. But to start somewhere.
We started somewhere, and we kind of got a general idea of what we're doing now, but
Don't do it, dude. I'm watching you.
okay.
What?
I thought you were talking to me.
No, that guy. So yeah, this is 32 minutes. If they haven't figured out that this is something that they want to watch, this will weed out a lot of people who'll go, oh yeah, this sucks, or this might get people going, hey, this is a great idea. Okay, so we cut it down and we talk about one thing in particular. Hey, how was your day? Oh, it was horrible because of this. Or they're teaching CRT, or they're not teaching CRT. They're teaching, there's people being stupid and petty, there was people being true and genuine. I mean, gives us something to do on long road trips. It'll be even more fun when we have guest speakers like Alina. And just think, when she gets older, she's gonna go, wow, they were talking about this when I was in the car. I know, and then we can have a whole conversation with nothing but Rosemary. So, yeah, people subscribe, they subscribe. If people follow, if they hate it, if they love it, I don't really care. You know, it's great that people love it. It's great that people hate it, but that's what makes this country great is they have the option to go somewhere else or stick around. Oh, this guy's tire's gonna go. You know why I backed off?
So if it flies out, it's going to hit us.
Yep. Oh, that's not going to be good. Here, record that on your phone. Oh. All right.